is the restaurant, is it been quite easy to socially distance people, or when people get inside, do they get?
No. And also everyone's very responsible. I think after 4 months of being under lockdown and pandemic, people are very careful because they understand that they're putting themselves at risk as well.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's quite civilized. I mean, we, of course, financially it doesn't add up, to have 25 people in a restaurant that seats 55.
Yeah.
But I'm just doing this out of a kind of obligation that those who I had promised. I guess this is my Rajput blood. I cannot leave. I promised I would feed them. I will feed them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if anyone can come and eat your biryani, they would, COVID or not. Hi, everyone who's joining us. We're just starting up this live and we'll start in a minute or two. So give us a hi if you're here. Let us know you're with us. We have an incredible speaker with us whom you can all see on the screen, and I'll introduce in a moment as well. So please do text that friend or cousin who would be interested, or family member, and join us and grab yourselves a drink, and we will get started in just a minute. I think we've been looking forward to this all day. My husband made the Matar Paneer from your book for lunch in anticipation. Every time he wants to cook Indian food, he picks up every time without fail, he picks up your book first. And then he looks.
That's so sweet. I love the bengan, by the way, that you did. Looks fabulous.
I love it. We make it at least once every 2 weeks. It's so delicious. So delicious.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
सुबह जैसे आँख खोली थी, आपने सोचा कि चलो चाय वाय का बंदोबस्त करते हैं, देखते हैं। जैसे आँख खोली, इधर भी मुर्दा और मक्खियाँ ऐसी उनके ऊपर कि जैसे कि लेयर ऑफ मक्खियाँ नहीं होती। जब तक 80 जिंदा तुसी भी जिंदा हो, जब 80 मर गए तो फिर उसकी जिम्मेवारी साड़ी नहीं।
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for being with us. We are on day 12 of day 16, and we had an incredible story yesterday from Monica talking about Hanani's journey from Balochistan to Punjab in India, the train with her mother, being a single bride with her husband many miles away for several years after, surprising her husband in the most beautiful story at Birmingham Airport in the mid-1950s, at a time when I'm sure few Indian women had means to surprise their husbands thousands and thousands of miles away. And just so many of you have written into me and commented on the emotion with which Monica told her story. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I felt as though all of us were sitting with our Nani hearing that story, and she was the vessel through which it was coming to us. It was so beautiful. Her Nani, who goes by Nani Bimla, also has an Instagram page, which I think everybody should check out because she is just the most wonderful person. So please do have a look at that. So that was wonderful. But today is really, really special for me, as we'll be speaking with somebody whom I really like. Genuinely, I admire her so much, and not because she's incredibly successful, which you all well know. You all know of her restaurant Darjeeling Express. You all know she's been on Chef's Table, where she was featured with her restaurant, her home, and her team. You all know of her many awards and accolades. Most recently, she was named one of Vogue's top 25 women shaping 2020. But it's none of this that makes her one of my favorite people. It's because she is one of the kindest people I've met, and somebody who lives by her ethos so strongly, in a way that is very obvious and a way that is very aspirational, I think, for many people. She lifts those around her, and she does so much to make people's lives better so continuously. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. You know her as the chef, you know her as the entrepreneur, but did you know that she's the daughter of Nawabs? Rajputs from Rajasthan via Bulandshahr in UP, and Nawabs from Jalpaiguri in North Bengal. She is an incredibly unique combination of Indian royalty, and she once said to me that on my plate and in the layering of my spices, I give you my whole ancestry. And so today, Asma Khan is going to tell us what partition meant for her family. Welcome, Asma. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And I absolutely loved meeting your grandmother. And when you asked me to, would I be happy to speak about this? I was like, yes, I don't often get a chance, I do always celebrate 15th of August and 14th. We have this kind of big congregation in the restaurant where the Pakistanis and the Indians get together. And we celebrate, but for me, that partition my family, it's something that people, a lot of what comes out of these partition stories is that, like Monica's thing about this big upheaval where you leave your homeland, you leave your watan, and you travel. And I've heard stories from people who I met in Asia where they talked about the pandan and this kind of the jhumar that they had taken, the little things that they carried with them, the spices, and you often hear about them taking the mitti from their angan and tying it in a little bag and bringing it. The problem is that partition divided families brutally. And I'll just talk about my father's side of the family. Very briefly, we are Bargujar Rajputs. We fought with Prithviraj Chauhan in the Doab. We were called in. Basically, we were, troublemakers, mercenary warriors who were called whenever Rajputs needed someone to fight in between. They called us. So we're basically the real kind of very, very fierce warrior tribe that always got involved in all the fights. And because of this, it's the same thing that Prithviraj Chauhan called us down into the Doab. Akbar decided that he had to make peace with us because we were causing too much trouble. So my ancestor and Akbar became very good friends, whose name was Lal Singh. And today we are still called Lal Khani Rajputs because as a term of endearment, he added Khan. But Lal Singh never became Muslim. So my family only converted to Islam in the time of Jahangir. Okay. And so that is the family I come from. We very, for generations and generations, as they say, the soil has been sieged with our blood. Mm-hmm. So the India I see today is very difficult to swallow, but I can talk about partition because every Muslim who is in India was given the choice. Mm-hmm. At that time, when all the stories came out of trains arriving with bodies of people, and just one minute, Rashmi, sorry, I'm in a kitchen, so you still have a lot of noise. Still have a noise coming through. People knew. It's not that they were unaware of the fact that they were at risk. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, everything melted down. But those who decided to stayed because they believed in a vision. So my great-grandfather was very involved in politics. He was the first Indian person who was nominated and made a chief minister of United Provinces, which is Uttar Pradesh and more, Uttarakhand, all of that area. Mm-hmm. He was Prime Minister of Hyderabad from 41 to 46. And in 44, the Nizam of Hyderabad awarded him the title of Saiful Mulk. So very respected, but absolutely passionate believer in democracy. The last Muslim League meeting he went to was in 36, led by Jinnah, and he had a huge falling out with Jinnah. And in Aligarh, where a lot of the intellectual movement for partition was happening, my great-grandfather, the Nawab Chatari, who's called Bapu, bitterly opposed it. He believed that we were better off, all the Muslims would be better off, to get our numbers counted in a grand democracy. And it should be on merit. He didn't think that Muslims should have any kind of protection, any better treatment than others. He felt we had it in us to succeed. And for him, it was very, very difficult to deal with partition. So at that time, Mountbatten, because Bapu was just getting more and more frustrated and depressed and not being able to negotiate with Jinnah and the Muslim League, and had a huge, so they sent him off they sent him to Hyderabad to placate the Nizam. So I know you've had a speaker before talking about partition, and there was a huge and real threat in Hyderabad with the Razakars who wanted dominion status for Hyderabad state or wanted to go to Pakistan, which would be like crazy. But when you look at it, not as crazy as what happened in Bengal, where you divided the country into two bits.
Yeah.
I mean, really, nobody was thinking, because people who were drawing lines on maps were not even thinking of the human cost. So it was possible that, you know, Hyderabad could have tried to break off. So Bapu went in there to try and convince the Nizam, to talk to him, to work with him, and to stand up to the Razakars. And his life was threatened. In 1947, you know, he had led a whole meeting with Gandhi on Hyderabad, and he was heard by, you know, all the people, to the extent, all the Razakars. And the Nizam came out on radio and said, the behavior of the Razakars against the Nawab Chatterji, who's my great-grandfather, smacks and resembles Hitler's Germany. This is terrorism. So, you know, it was a time of great division. So for him, a man who gave his entire life to making sure partition didn't happen, and then watched with a broken heart when it did, I think that was a shock when the country divided, and then our family divided, because of some family disagreements. His eldest son, his pride and joy, my father's sire, the eldest son, over which the whole house that we live in is named after him, left in the middle of the night and went off to Pakistan. And my grandfather, for whom he was his apple of his eye, said, I will never see him again. He left for Pakistan, and, you know, I will never.
For a political reason?
No, family falling out. I don't really talk about that, but basically, it was about marriage and, you know, not being happy and all kinds of family pressures. He was a highly romantic, very poetic man, and found it difficult, the situation he was in, and left. He left his wife and 2 sons and left for Pakistan. Went on to become a senator there, became a very prominent diplomat.
Oh,
sorry, is that?
Okay, no, your sound went for a moment. Just the last sentence, if you could repeat.
Okay, many years later, he came to Aligarh. I was there, and there was an India-Pakistan cricket match going on. We were listening to it on the radio. He was very muted in his reaction, because he did feel this is not the time when you cheer. You should not cheer for anyone. It was really funny, because we were all listening to the radio commentary at that time. But it was incredibly hard for Bapu, for my great-grandfather, to take this separation. And a few years later, in the 60s, my father, only sister, fell in love with a Pakistani diplomat in London. And the whole family fought that so hard. And my grandmother, who's from Punjab and remembers partition, said, I lose my daughter, you can't go. But my puppy was so in love with my uncle. She wanted to get married, and she did get married, and she left, and she never came home because she couldn't get a visa to come home for a long time. I remember the sporadic meetings, and I remember my grandmother spending that entire time in tears at the impending departure. She wept from the moment she arrived, she wept till she left. It was really hard to watch. And the thing is that, you know, partition, for us, we live with it every day. We still live with it every day, because my mother's family, you know, Bengal-based, you know, in Jalpaiguri, all of that, really, again, very against the idea of partition. No one went to East Pakistan at that time in 47, because the idea of a state being created based on religion was very difficult, because my mother's family also was very committed to the idea of a united India, of democracy, of equal rights, of equality. But everything changed in 71, because in 71, the government in Bengal interned all the prominent Muslim family heads, including my great-grandfather. They were imprisoned for nothing. And it was, sorry, I had a call coming through. They were imprisoned for nothing. And that night when my great-grandfather was finally released from prison, he had 7 sons, and they were divided. They were literally divided based on, my grandfather was not considered someone who should be sent off, because he had already got 2 of his daughters married by then in 71. And So it was like, okay, let's not, and my mother was also married by then. So they said, he can't go because they were all married in India. So those who did not have their children married in this country, they left in the middle of the night. And that's how my mother's family got partitioned in 71. And the brothers got split. And it's very hard for me when people ask me, you know, how do you feel like an Indian Muslim? I tell them, you know, the dust that flies from the Jama Masjid and hits your lips, it's generations of my family buried in the soil. Divided we are, but what is very hard to understand is we chose to stay because we believed in the democracy, we believed in the vision that we had a right, that we would be equal. And that slowly has dispersed. The Constitution, when you read it, I'm a constitutional lawyer. I did my PhD on British constitutional law, but the last chapter I did a comparison of secularism as seen in France, secularism of separation of church and state in America, in England, where the Queen is head of church and state, so there's no separation, and India. And I wrote about how if you were to write down a perfect textbook of how secularism should have been set up in a country, it should have been the way it was done in India. Incredible constitution, the preamble, you have the rights of everyone to not only, you are free to be what you want to be. No religion is given rights over others. No one's citizenship is based on their religion. It is an incredible document, really worthy of reading and holding up. But unfortunately, that is not how it is being implemented. And I find it hard, to come to terms with the situation right now, where, I always imagine these trees, that are growing on the other side, but down there somewhere in the soil, the roots are all connected because their nourishment is coming from the same place. Yeah. So when you look at architecture, be it in Lahore, be it in old Dhaka or Delhi, the design, the food, the music, the rhythm, the fabric, all of this unites us. And down below these superficial borders, we are all clinging together. And in that dust and soil of all three lands are human beings buried for whom this was their watan, a single watan. So it's not that I don't recognize partition. It's, something that we live with all the time. I cannot go to, and, I remember I thinking of going to Pakistan to see my aunt when she was unwell. Sadly, she died, but she ended up dying in Cambridge, with me there all night, talking to her. So it came full circle. She was saying that I left home, but I have you with me. Right. So it was not Pakistan. She didn't die in Pakistan. She didn't die in India. She died in Cambridge. But she said the fact that I'm with you, I feel in some ways I've gone home as she was dying. It's really sad. But why does it have to be this way? And I don't understand this whole, I don't celebrate independence. Because for me, it's very hard because I know how in my family we bitterly fought the division of our people. Then our families had to be divided. And it's difficult to explain to someone where their family has not been divided and split into three parts, how it feels that then when you are in your own soil, people question your right to walk on that soil as an equal citizen. Because we chose to be where we are. We chose to be Indian. And I will always be Indian. And, even though I have a British passport now, my identity, my every root is Indian, but an undivided India. So on my menu in my restaurant, I tell people, I don't serve the food that is Indian. I serve the food of 1930s undivided Indian Muslim family. And the sad thing is what partition did is it took away from us this Dawat tradition. Yes, I'm from an Nawab family, but all of us have lived our entire life with our heads down. We never recovered from partition. These are forgotten feasts. The food I cook is those feasts that never happened again. Those who went to Pakistan, their food very quickly took on very Punjabi influence, the food of where they moved. They didn't get the ingredients. So when I now taste halim and khubani ka meetha as well, or a lot of things that are made in Pakistan, it's very different. It's very different from the original 1930s. I cook that old-fashioned, old recipes. But what happened is that it has disappeared. We no longer celebrate the way we used to.
So that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you, was around food. But before I ask you that, your father's family, very, very politically involved at the time of partition, making it even more emotional, perhaps.
Yeah.
The decision was personal. And your mother's family then in 1971. So today, how is the conversation different in those two families? And is there any fluidity of movement between, say, the family in Pakistan and India, the family in India and Bangladesh? And what's that like?
Pakistan and India, no one, after my puppy got married, very little marriage, because everybody was horrified that they never saw her.
Right.
But there is enormous amount of fluidity with my family in Bangladesh and India. So almost all my cousins who grew up in India are married to boys in my family in Bangladesh.
Okay.
And I am also married to a Bangladeshi, but not in my family at all. He's completely unconnected. But we have a very fluid, close relationship with Bangladesh and India. We occasionally have our visa hassles. Right. And, then we're not allowed to travel. But it's a lot easier between Bangladesh and India. But between Pakistan, I've been to Pakistan once in my life. I would love to go, but I will not go because I do not want to be harassed going in and out of India. Irrespective of which passport you carry, they still ask you. I think this is just so unhelpful and so unacceptable. So, we have really literally just completely cut connections with our family. We meet them in London. I have my great grand uncle turned 97 yesterday in Aligarh. His daughter was married to a Pakistani, and her husband died. A lot of things have happened in the family. She's been very ill, but she's not had a visa to be able to come. And my grand uncle is 97. He's too old to travel. And he told my father many times, "Bas main ek dafa uska chehra dekhu, phir main marunga." And it's so sad. Even on his 97th birthday, that's all he was saying. I just want to see her face once. And I met her in London. I carried a pair of socks. He wept. He wept holding those socks as if they were, I don't know what. She sent him a pair of socks and he wore them and slept every night. So it's just it is horrible, the fact that, egos and people who have interest in the arms trade and, unscrupulous political people have separated families, but they have also, not respected those who stayed. And my Bapu used to always say, I'm against partition because I'm afraid that those who go to the other side will never ever feel this is their watan. They will be given names and never be respected. I'm afraid about Kashmir. He was putting us on record in the 30s in his arguments with Jinnah that Kashmir will be at risk. And what will happen to the Indian Muslims who stay behind? We will become second-class citizens. Numbers count. We should be together and fight with the Congress at par, as equal. But, all his fears have come out true. So, with what has been happening in India recently, we're second-class citizens. And, that is deeply upsetting because it really makes you understand that, it could have been something beautiful. We could have been something incredible. And we completely have blown it. We have blown it because, Bangladesh was unsustainable, a country created based on religion. Language became more important. So it was partitioned again. Of course, there are also the geographical problems. India played some role, of course, as well. But I just think that, the idea of the Watan, where you people are speaking the same languages, so Punjabi should be together, Bengal should be together, where people who are the same, who speak the same language, where their heart beats to the same rhythm, should have been together. And we should not have been divided. Of course, the reality is that we have been divided. But I don't know what the time is, but I have one story which I want to tell you all about mangoes.
Please.
So India, of course, you only get Indian mangoes. Pakistan, you only get Pakistani mangoes. But in places like Dubai and in London, you get both. So there's all this mango rivalry that happens, which you hear about, some in quite seriousness, some in jest, where people talk about the Pakistani chosa, the Indian chosa, the deseri, which arm is better, you know, Alfonso, all of that. But I always tell people, I point out to people that one of the most famous mangoes in Pakistan, the Anwar Rathore, is actually from Baghpat in UP, from my family. When the managers and the people in we had a lot of land, decided to flee to Pakistan. They didn't tell anybody. They stole the podas and they smuggled it across to Pakistan. And they grew an orchard there. And the Rathole, the Baghpat Rathole, which in 1935, my great-grandfather had brought it to the Great Exhibition in London. It was declared the best mango in the world. There was a mango competition.
Wow.
The Rathole from Baghpat, you know, because we are basically, Anubhav thing, his family is spread all over. We're the Lal Khani clan. So from Baghpat, from Rathole, this was taken. And 1935, best mango in the world. We don't grow it anymore because they took it away and they grew it and they gave it another name. And it was never grown in my family again. Partition is that wounding, that even the soil, when something was uprooted from the soil, no one had the heart to grow this again. And that mango, which was in 1935 considered the best mango in the world, never grew again, but it grows in Pakistan. And somehow, whenever I go to the shops and people say, Bibi, aap ye le jaiye, Anwar Rathore, I can't bring myself to buy it. I can't. Because somehow I can't swallow that.
Yeah.
It hurts too much. So the thing is that, you know, memories are deep. Memories go back a long time. But I think that we need to have a conversation as well about food and families and what happened to dishes, what happened to, you know, people who went on the other side, how did things change?
Absolutely.
Because we still talk too much about the burning trains and the dead bodies. And I want to talk about what united us. It's our food. And I'm not saying this as a chef. And I'm not saying this because my family is divided across 3 countries. It is the same watan. The soil is the same. The nourishment of that trees come from the same place. They took away the saplings, they grew their trees and it became this amazing thing. We never grew it again, but we couldn't, in our heart, we couldn't do it. So there are many divided families, but very few people want to talk about it because it's too painful. It's been hard for me to talk about it. I am like 4 generations down.
Yeah.
The discovery that the orchards were stripped and the podas had been taken. That sense of betrayal.
Yeah.
I am 4 generations from that. On a street of London, I cannot buy that mango. It says everything because I can't take it. I cannot take it.
Yeah, no, you feel it in your soul. Thank you so much for, opening up with us and sharing that story here. I mean, it's powerful. It's tangible. It's the land itself. And you were talking about food. Maybe you can tell us a little bit. We've spoken before about the 2 very different food influences in your life. Maybe you can talk a little bit about those food influences and then how you've observed they've changed with those that left.
Yeah, so I can give the example of Halim. You know, the Halim in Hyderabad, very unique, you know, as seen as distinctive. If you have Halim is made throughout Ramzan in Bangladesh. I spent a lot of Ramzans in Bangladesh. Halim is made in Pakistan. All very different. So, you know, the dishes adapted and changed. And, you know, so anything from the korma to pulaus to biryanis, all completely taking on a different character. One of the things is that in Pakistan, you get tomatoes. So they have to put out tomatoes in everything, which is a nightmare. Because UP mein, you don't get tomatoes. You only get tomatoes in winter. Most people will know this. Now, of course, you get everything.
Yeah.
You get tomatoes only in winter. So you would not put tomatoes in everything, but you'll find tomatoes in every stupid thing that's made in Pakistan. And that's because there's abundance of tomatoes.
Right.
And also the kind of use of ghee. Ghee was not used so heavily in places like Aligarh And, it was used in of course, a lot in the Awadh court. But the excessive amounts of ghee, again, very Punjabi. So you find a lot of the influences of, when people became wealthy. So, our cuisine is very unique, Muslim Rajput cuisine, the Lal Khali clan, because we came from, an area which today is around bordering Pakistan, Punjab, and Rajasthan. We were Rajputs from there. So the very, very bad quality land. So we didn't really, so very simple food, very, very simple food, but beautifully made. And, you hear stories, which I always thought that this was a story that was not true, that, our cooks, just to kind of make things a bit special, would baghar the dal with a gold asharfi in our family, because we ate a lot of dal. We didn't have that kind of money to have a grand, royal cuisine. But this was their style, that they used to asharfi to baghar. But these are really these stories of, people who had very little, but enjoyed food. But what happened with partition is those who went to Pakistan acquired things that didn't exist in the heartland of UP. And that twisted the cuisine to be very Punjabi in lots of ways. And in Bangladesh, you find now there is a kind of, again, a move towards making the food much richer and more grand. As people feel this is Mughlai food, it should be. But if you have a properly made ghazala in Calcutta, or a korma, or you have a chicken chop, even the biryani, there isn't that richness of nuts and fruit and ghee in it. Because Bengal, there was no grass. We didn't have ghee. We didn't have cows. So, to make ghee of that quantity, you need good quality grass. So just logically, the Muslim Bengali cuisine is not without all of this embellishment that is possible in Lahore and Lucknow, but not possible in Calcutta, in Dhaka. But it's becoming there because people can now buy these things. And I'm afraid when I see the cuisine becoming, if I put so much ghee and, ghee and khoa in my juta, it'll taste nice. So it's just, I want to see the finesse, the asharfi that's being fried in ghee to add that 1 tablespoon of ghee, that's the baghar. That delicacy is going because that is the original 1930s. So people who come to my cuisine, they often use words like naked, layered, gentle, that you are left waking up in the middle of the night saying, what did I taste in that kebab? What was that last spice? That is the 1930s style of cooking, where it is very layered. It is so subtle. And, there are other royal families where they used to make halwa out of gosht to confuse and bemuse people. So they didn't add, everybody could afford the ghee and all the nuts and, dates and all of that. So many royal families, Muslim royal families, played with ingredients. They didn't make it. But this is a 1930s thing that a lot of people don't know. Like my mother's family, we had kheer made with pyaz. And poor, unsuspecting people had to keep guessing, isme kya hai? Obviously, in their life, they would never bloody guess it's pyaz. Gosht ka halwa. What is this? So we used to make, in my family, I believe, because we were Rajput converts, we became, but we still had bloodline in Rajasthan. And every wedding, they would come for our weddings. But we didn't want them to feel that they were eating different food. So I believe, now this is a recipe that's lost in time, that they made things that look like eggs with all vegetarian ingredients. So the pulaus had andas on it, but was made with something, I don't know what. But I have heard from other royal Rajputs that, hey, we had heard that people have gone to your family wedding and they were served this egg. Wow. And this was a mystery. So this is the thing, that in all of this, people played with those ingredients. And I think that so much is lost. Partition absolutely butchered our cuisine. People died, and I know it's very sad that there was displacement. Look at my own family. But as someone who cooks and loves the stories behind food, what the 1940s did is it ripped apart those tables, those dawats that people had, where families congregated and they played these games. Ye kya cheez ka bana hua, ye halwa, ye kheer mein kya hai. That went away forever and has never come back. And those who left, my people who left their watan, could not play those games either, because they left something that they will never admit. They left their heart back home. They took away everything. They took away the plants too, and they grew those mangoes. But they could never ever have played those games, where my father talks about how different varieties of mangoes were used to cook with meat. So the mangoes, so you have to guess, once it's cooked with meat, what was the variety of mango? My family, this is a big thing, chosa, the seri, so these were the things. No one plays those games because, actually for us, the joy went out of feeding. And there were empty chairs in every house of those who left. And those empty chairs remained empty forever for all of us. So the departure of Rahataya, I have a recipe which I didn't go too much into it, but anyone who's got my cookbook will see there's a Narangi kurma.
Yeah.
That was his recipe, never recreated. I got that recipe out after huge difficulty. When he went for Pakistan, it was never done. He was a man who had made an orangery in the fortress because he had seen it in Spain. But all of that was removed after he left. And the korma was never made. It's there, the recipe is there in my book. But it was uncomfortable telling my father and everybody I put that recipe in. Yeah. But everyone has forgiven me. Yeah. I'm very nice, people forgive me. But at least they've said they've forgiven me. But I think these things need to be told. Yeah. It's not that you're downgrading the death of people and the bloodshed and the crazy, crazy loss of life and property. All of that happened. But I want to draw the night in. I want to sit down and imagine that meal in that Havelis through those shattered glass. I want to talk about food. That is my next project. And that's where I'm going because I really need to be able to write those recipes down that are disappearing and all those forgotten feasts that people don't talk about anymore.
Can you maybe describe for us, what would a feast in your father's home pre-1940s?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of Afghan style of food as well.
Yeah.
So, the pulaus.
And also the Persian chefs who would
we had Persian chefs, but like in Hyderabad where we had a lot of family connections, shikam puri kebab is stuffed, it is actually Farsi, which is stuffed in the stomach. Right. So in the shikam puri kebab is super soft. Galati kebab is overrated. Everyone should have properly made shikam puri kebab. It kind of just collapses because the meat goes in, but inside is absolutely hung yogurt, which is so tight that melts into the meat. If you had tried to fry something that soft, it won't work. The techniques are just unbelievable of how they managed to get the food so fragrant, so delicate, so subtle. And so kebabs would be a very big thing, the chapli kebabs that in my family, but also the rice, beautiful, the yakhni pulao, no one completely knows because yakhni is Kashmiri but yakhni pulao in Lucknow is completely different.
Right.
And the whole idea of, so we use a lot of yakhni to make our pulaos. Then in Bhopal, you have the achar, achar gosht, achar chicken. That was because the cooks came from North Bengal, Jalpaiguri, to Bhopal. And Begum of Bhopal was a meat eater. So fed up of the fact that their Bengali vegetables, kind of tempered with panchphoron was not being eaten, they put it into the chicken and the meat. Because this is very unusual to have panchphoron with an achar, pickling spices in meat.
Right.
It's not done. It's not done in Bengal. This came out in the 1930s with the cooks wanting their hour of glory. Came up with this Bhopali chicken, the achar, which is on my menu over here. Yeah. So achar chicken essentially has panchphoron, which is only used in Bengal for vegetables. They would never put it in chicken. But these guys wanted the fed up because they felt like dismissed and their food was never eaten or celebrated. Yeah. So they came up with this. So all these stories of subtleties, of little things that people did. Yeah. So our feast would have been really about, this kind of celebrating subtleties, of coming up with things which people had not expected. So it wasn't the expensive ingredient. It was the twist on that ingredient that you had, which made something very interesting or exciting. And, we ate very simply because originally coming from very arid land, our food was never ostentatious and has remained like this, quite simple. And, our weddings are not over the top. But like in my mother's family in North Jalpaiguri, you still had the Calcutta weddings. I remember kusi, which is the whole goat, barbecued with chicken inside it. There's egg inside and there's pulao inside the chicken. Huge thing. It was made in my wedding too. And that is completely a kind of, an influence of the Arab trade. But it was only when we invited the traders, historically in our family, they came with this as a gift.
Wow.
As what they would make in their weddings. And this is why it was always made in our weddings. Because we were we collected tax, Nawabs were basically tax collectors. Nothing very royal about us. So these guys, the Afghans who were around, who came from Kabul, and that's the influence also you'll find in the pulao, very much like Kabuli pulao in my father's family. Very unique to that. And if you dig around, you'll find out that was the Afghans in the kitchen who came up with this. They used the yakhni and they made the Afghan kind of pulao, but it's all called our pulao, Achatari pulao. But really, it's the Afghans. So it's 1930s was a highly exciting time. If I had a time capsule as a cook, I would want to go back to that time when India was, facing, threat of partition. There was talk, but the lines had not been drawn. Blood had not been shed. People still ate with each other, and we still celebrated in those feasts.
And what you're saying is just bringing something to mind, is that the idea of breaking bread with somebody is so powerful. And I think India is one of few countries in the world where bread is broken in a very communal fashion. And it's very difficult, even if you want to, it's very difficult to break bread with people outside of you, Yeah. And I think, what you're saying is just driving that point further home for me, that we created more boundaries to being across a table from each other, or across a chitai from each other, whatever it is. We drew more of those. We didn't
absolutely
get rid of them.
No, and the thing is that, I'm really surprised in a country where people die of hunger in India. How is it that we can resent what someone else eats? I tell everybody, and this is a Muslim thing, which is praise be to Allah. Alhamdulillah, you eat, I eat. How does it matter to me what you eat? I want to sit on the table with you. Of what you eat, I'll eat what I can. And I will be grateful that I eat. We take food to become weapons. We beat people to death because of what they think that they might have eaten. Where is our morality? Where is our humanity? Shame on a country which has reduced food to violence. How do you eat? How do you not weep at night knowing that there are children on the streets going to sleep hungry, that there are farmers hanging themselves because they cannot afford to feed their families? I know this from the red light area in Calcutta, where fathers come with their young daughters, 7 and 8, to sell them so that they can feed the rest of the family. And then you are bothered to beat someone to death because they're eating something that you don't like. I am shocked that the rhetoric and the debate is in the mainstream media is so accepting this idea that, you will lynch and you will beat and you will stand judgment. And it's not just India, I have to say in the West as well. This whole idea of veganism, and before this clean eating. So all of us are eating dirty food. If you're eating clean food, this whole idea that, this is thing and you should eat organic, you should eat. If you can afford to eat, you should be grateful. And this lecturing other people and othering of other people or because of what they eat has not allowed us to progress. And us, especially for women, the idea that we're not on the table with the men in the family, that often women are eating separately, has not allowed us to break patriarchy. In the hot chapatis and the garam rotis that we're making, in the fact that we are having to serve warm rice, ready-made, every drink, frying the papad last minute. We are divided by the food we are being asked to make. Patriarchy lives every day in our food. We need to break that by stopping all of this, by stopping all these divisions.
To say, in our home, everybody eats together. It's so simple to do that in your home. And then it starts going out from there. But if you don't do it in your, where do you do it?
No, and the thing is that, I remember telling all these girls, they have 4 girls in my restaurant who work in my kitchen. From 2012, they were supper club, working for the supper clubs, are pure vegetarians. They help me cook everything. And I once told them, it would never have been in my kismat to have sat down and had a cup of tea with you. We would never have met. But, London Mary Jaan gave us a space where we could all meet. I remember the first time these girls were nannies, came to the house, and I said, "Baitho chai piyo." They kept standing. I said, "Baith jao." They kept standing. And I said, "Nahi, baith jao, please," on my dining table. But Kalpana, Shanta, and Rashmi kept standing and were not sitting on my table, unsure if this was okay. And I told them, my husband is inside. When he comes out, I will introduce you. You say hello to him, but sit down, please. And they sat down. That was a turning point, because it's so important. It is so important. And the composition of my kitchen is something of it doesn't matter to me, but I want to say it in this forum. My entire staff is Hindu. I'm the only Muslim. We celebrate every festival in this kitchen, from Holi to whatever. And when we had Diwali, something went wrong. It was just like the whole world turned up. I told everybody that we'll finish at 9, you all go home. Nobody could go home that night. Nobody. And I saw all of them putting their phone out. And one of them is a grandmother. And I know that they were getting calls from the family. I apologized at the end of service, which was like midnight. And I said, "I'm so sorry you could not do Diwali at home," because the plan was for them to go, but it just went mad. And Uma turned around and told me, she's got a 20-year-old granddaughter. She works here. She's here right now as well. She said, "Mem Saab, ye to mera mandir hai, and aap meri devi hai. Hum kisko jaake puja karenge?" That, to have got from this woman who never sat down on my table to this, that she could say to me, I wept so much, because I realized one thing: when you eat together and you embrace each other, every prejudice that she had, any misconception she had broken purely by working with me. And she could say that in a room full of people who had not gone home that night to celebrate Diwali with their family. So we managed to light a diya with butter. Oh God, whole bloody thing almost caught fire. I said, "Yeah, we'll light a diya and we'll have some kind of thing, because we'll do some kind of puja in the kitchen, because I'm not going to let you guys go like this." And it was just really crazy. And we all had chini, because there's no mithai. We all had spoons of sugar. But it was just wonderful. And whenever things go bad, we always laugh and remember this. Chini. It's not that day when we had to have spoons of sugar. So we have bad days, and we have got some very bad days, and things go wrong. But there is we come from a land of loving, generous people. We have a land of great food. We should use that food to build bridges, not to hate each other.
Absolutely. I mean, everything you've said, I think there are lots of comments coming through about just a testament to you. Everything is very moving. People are so taken by everything that you've said. So I just want to express that to you, that there's lots of activity on the comments about all of this. But I wanted to ask you, can you tell us the sort of funny story about your father's family eating a Bengali biryani for the first time?
Yes. So in my father's family, they tend to marry within their own clan. There's 5 clans, so from Baghpat, Sadabad, Dhanpur. So they're just all spread out. And they cannot marry because, the Rajputs tend to marry Rajputs. They don't marry outside. So they marry within their own Rajput, Muslim. And, when push comes to shove, they will always be on the side of Rajputs, irrespective of whether they're Hindus or whatever. Really? So Rajput is a Rajput first. So it's Rajput, they're Bargujar, Suryavanshi. Rajput comes first before anything else for my father's family. And my father, innocent man, turned up, age 21, got a job in Calcutta. My Nana was his landlord. My Nana has 5 daughters. Who decided, this is great. Nawab ka beta hai, very well-known, political family. my Nana asked my grandmother, and my grandmother thought this is, she's Punjabi, so she was a complete outsider. Very much my grandfather married her looking at her ankles. So she was a complete outsider, not Rajput, not anything. So she said, yeah, do it, because she had no idea of what. But my grandfather said, if you've given your word, then we must have this wedding. Because my grandmother had not fully understood what this Rajput clan was, because she got married and she thought everybody can get married whoever they want. So when they got married, in our weddings, girls don't come in the barat.
Okay.
Very much in the Rajput tradition, it's only men only barat. So they turned up, these few men in my father's family were served the biryani with great style, with aloo, which is the Calcutta thing.
Right.
They got really worried. They told my uncle who fixed the wedding, are you mad? What kind of family have you got us into? They are so confused that it's such a big wedding. They have not even given us meat, because the first thing that was put on their place was the aloo, which is a prize thing. The complete perfect aloo. So my uncle from my mother's side, who served the aloo first. He was saying, "Hi, yeah, we are doomed. Ab kaisi bahu aayegi, to our family, that it is this thing." And even now, till now, my mother is called Bahurani by a lot of old servants.
Right.
And this story of this aloo in the biryani is still told. Every time I meet some old servant or some old, someone from Chatari, the palace, they will say, "Hi, but do they still really serve aloo?" They are so shocked. And I think, my parents have, been married over 50 years now.
Yeah.
And yet my father's family still cannot get over it. They are stunned that this happened to them. Oh God. Yeah. So it's just aloo story is there. It'll continue for generations. People 5 generations after me will still talk about the Kanjus wedding with the aloo being served before the gosht.
That's one of my favorite ones of your story. That was a bit of a diversion, but I really wanted you to share that one. And my last question, before we do maybe just a quick little fun thing, my last question is, what parts of your family history do you think are important to pass down to your children who are not even in India or anywhere on that land for a long period of time?
I think that because my husband is Bangladeshi and spent his time between Pakistan and Bangladesh before he moved to England. It's really important that my children have a strong South Asian identity. This idea that, yes, these 3 lands have names, but when you are not in any of them and you are in a 4th place, which is England, I want them to feel an affinity and a link. And it's very amusing because my son went to university for his first year. And he told me I made friends and all that, randomly mentioning people. And then I realized that, most of his friends were Sikhs. He had a kind of, he told me, I'm going to Gurdwara and can I call my friend to feed him this and that, the other. He has a restaurant. His father came from Punjab. He wants you to eat the samosa of his father. And I felt really proud because I realized that he didn't tell me about everything else, but he was explaining to me who the grandparents were of his friends. Right. That they came from Punjab or they came from Pakistan, they came from India, that this is a, Indian Gujarati. And I just think that it's very, very important. It's important to celebrate the best things about our culture. Absolutely. And all the creative things are the best things. I want to delete and remove politicians on all sides because they have not helped us. They have not helped us. And separate from all the ugly hatred and the shrieking, shrill voices of news anchors, I want people to listen to the voice inside them. Learn to love. Everybody is teaching you how to hate. Yeah. And for God's sake, this is your only life. If all you're going to spend your life is hating, where is the space for love? And this is how the one thing I've taught my children, that embrace this South Asian identity. Whether it is Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Indian, Sri Lankan, it doesn't matter. Because you are one people. And if you go back centuries, and what you don't know is the trees that are growing on both sides are holding the roots together, holding it tight. So imagine those roots. And I named my son Aris after Erit, which is roots, rooted to the soil. And I named him that because when I realized I was, it was going to be a boy, I wanted him to have. So it is the main, it comes from the word earth, erit. It's Aris, the way I pronounce his name, Aris, because, I have the Urdu pronunciation of Z, not the. So it's erit actually, it's Aris. And it is that thing, rooted to the earth. That is the one thing I've taught my children. Be rooted, be humble, stay low. Because, this whole thing of, a tree that is laden with fruits will always be low. Celebrate who you are, but by being humble, try and explain to people that this is your culture. And humility is so much part of our culture. We are not an arrogant people. And when you hear hatred, it stems from arrogance.
I think those are some really beautiful thoughts to end with, and what a lovely sentiment behind your son's name. And I think all of us, whether we're talking about Pakistan, India, or Bangladesh, we say Desi. We don't say it, that's Nepal even. That's the word we use. We say Desi.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is that, the thing is that enough has happened.
Yeah.
Decades have passed. You want to leave a legacy beyond the bloody trains for the next generation. That doesn't mean partition didn't happen. We need to even examine it further and talk about food and talk about violence. But we also need to talk about how we move forward. We haven't done enough of that. I'm so grateful you've done this. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh my goodness. I
love talking to you. See, you met my parents. So my Alu wala mother and the non-Alu wala father. Yes.
They were lovely. No, I mean, thank you. It's 100% me who should be thanking you and not the other way around. And, I know you're so busy, so to take this time out and do this. And like I said, I could see from the comments, every single person has loved this talk. And so just to express all of that to you on behalf of everyone who's commenting. But just before we end, I wanted to do a quick sort of rapid fire with you to see.
Okay, yeah.
To see your favorites. Okay, Calcutta or London?
Calcutta.
Calcutta biryani or Awadhi biryani?
Calcutta biryani.
Calcutta Chinese or Calcutta Punjabi food?
You can't give us in Calcutta. The answer will always be Calcutta.
So Calcutta Chinese food or Calcutta Punjabi food?
No, Calcutta Chinese food.
Calcutta Chinese food. Okay. The Tube or the Darjeeling Express?
Darjeeling Express.
Your favorite item on the Darjeeling Express menu today?
I think the chicken puri kebab.
The special one. And finally, BBC or Doordarshan?
BBC.
I'd have to agree.
You must understand. I left India in the 90s, huh? Doordarshan was
I don't know
that song, and we only had Chitrahar. Yeah, we only had Chitrahar to see, huh? So I have my Doordarshan is that, huh? So I don't know what Doordarshan is like now, huh?
Yeah. And finally, your favorite English food?
I love shepherd's pie. I love mashed potatoes, but I love shepherd's pie. Keema, anything, it's too good.
Yeah.
I love.
I mean, there's nothing really not to like about it. It's lovely mashed potatoes with some ground meat. It's delicious.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Asma, thank you so much. This has been just, I love talking.
Please give my love to your grandmother, okay?
I will.
I hope she remembers me.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And they'll both be on Saturday and Sunday, actually. Both my Nani and then my Daddy. So if you're around.
No, I'll watch. Yeah. If I can, otherwise, I hope. This is being recorded, right? So I can see it later.
You can watch it later.
So I can see it in case I can't see because I'm working.
Yeah. And we're so excited to see whatever it is that you do next. And as soon as I can be in London, I will be at that table eating your biryani, and I can't wait for that moment.
I look forward to feeding you and all of those who've been listening in. I look forward to feeding all of you. I cannot see all your faces, but I let me serve you. Please come and we can talk about everything that we love about the country we come from.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much.
I'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye.
Bye.